Good morning, everybody. As usual, just let me know that you can see me and hear me okay. I have two dogs in my house right now, which means that if at any point it sounds like there's an avalanche happening in the background, it's just the two dogs. They're playing. So I hope everyone's doing well, and I'm glad to be able to sit and talk with you all this morning. I spent some time with you all. It's been an absent few months for me. I was in retreat for 40 days. Some of you know, I did a 40-day retreat with a difficult fast, and it was difficult on the body but good on the mind. And then I was out of retreat for a little bit, and Ramos and I went on one of our yearly road trips that we tend to do, and out into the desert to some different hermitage places, and to see some different spiritual figures, and to read some petroglyphs. because you should learn at some point, you know, I don't know exactly when it happens, I can't pinpoint it, but at some point in time you learn how to read petroglyphs. Like you can just you develop the right kind of clairvoyance, and you can read hieroglyphs, you can read petroglyphs, you can read Mayan engravings, whatever it is. You can just, could you translate it necessarily? No, not necessarily, but you can understand the spiritual influx that's being delivered from those. And then you gradually begin to just look at it and know, oh, this is what they're teaching. I'll teach you guys sometimes. I don't know if anybody in here, was anybody here with me when we were in England and I was reading the hieroglyphs in the British History Museum? You know, you eventually learn these, and they actually have a lot of, yeah, the Naga Gate had some little petroglyphs. So eventually you learn to read all these things. And there's not even too much of a technique. It's more of just you have to like inhale them. It's strange. Like you have to just kind of create this inhale-exhale connection between them. And then you can read them. You can read every single little thing, and you just understand, especially the spiritual teachings. So we like to do that too. When we travel, we like to make sure we stop at places that have different petroglyphs and read them and learn what the shamans of those traditions were teaching. And now I'm back, and I thought it'd be good for us to all sit and talk. So, since it's been a little bit, I'm going to turn the floor over to you guys, and we'll just talk about whatever it is you guys want to talk about this morning. I don't know how much of a delay we have. Probably a few minutes. Yeah, the electrical things. Talking a bunch this morning, just a whole bunch of okays and yeses in the Slack chat. Nathan asked asked if the retreat was a specific kind of retreat. Yeah, generally this was actually a very different kind of retreat for me. Normally, most of my retreats are alchemical retreats, external alchemy and internal alchemy, because I need to, you know, I need to replenish myself. You know, like everybody's been eating my energy all year long. It's not you all's fault, but everybody's, you know, been connecting, been teaching, been sending my energy out into the world, performing different acts of magic for different places, and then I have to regenerate, or else I'm going to be, you know, 40 years old and not look a day past 70. So normally my yearly retreat is done in wintertime, when the energy, when the chi of the atmosphere, the energy of your organs, of your channels, leaves the exterior channels and goes into the organs, right? And as it goes into the organs in wintertime, your internal alchemy has kind of this very profound effect. So winter time is a very interesting time to do a lot of intense internal alchemy. That's normally what I do. I actually did something different this year, which is why it was so physically demanding on me. It was because actually my physical body was kind of giving out on me come about day 20, day 25 of a pretty severe fast and a lot of austerities. There's no heater up in the room, so it was cold the entire time. It was snowing. So it was definitely a very austere retreat, but it was meant to be that way. It's a very prayer-driven retreat, and when you're doing a lot of prayer, you want to drive out the nefesh, the animal self, as much as possible, because the nefesh, I'm using Hebrew term here, other words for it are escaping my mind at the moment, but the nefesh is actually seen as the Greeks understood it to be like a thick humor in the blood, you know, like a kind of vapor that was in your blood. And if it was too thick, it impeded the flow of your energy. And so the point of this retreat, and any retreat really focused on prayer, is you starve the nefesh by keeping it hungry, keeping it thirsty, and keeping it tired. You know, you don't eat, you don't drink, and you don't sleep. And when you do so in very moderate quantities, and you're really very strict with yourself. And after a while, the animal self becomes too weak, right? If you deprive an animal of food, water, and sleep, it starts to get weak. It loses its bite. And that's what happens. It's usually about 2-3 weeks into that retreat, the animal self totally drops. And now, through lots and lots of prayer, you're able to really connect to the divine. So it's a very prayer-driven retreat, about 8 to 12 hours of prayer a day at the height of the retreat. And then my body was a mess when I came out of retreat. My body was a wreck. Yeah, I was going in and out of ketosis a lot. And, but now I'm much better. Actually, kind of the good thing is when your body's such a wreck, that's when it actually responds the best to all the special mercury medicines, alchemical medicines, things like that can actually penetrate into the flesh. So Ramos got me on some good routines and I put myself on a good diet, and now I'm feeling better than ever. Lewis asked how work on 3 awakenings is progressing. So it's not doing what I wanted it to do. You know, like I was hoping to be more active with it by now. Some of that was delayed by retreat. I actually hadn't planned to do a 40-day retreat until a few weeks before I did the retreat. So my 2018 plan initially didn't really involve a 40-day retreat. But also some of the issues I'm just waiting. We have some students actually going through like a coding class software. I don't want to sound old and try to describe it. I can't think of what it is, but it's like a software class or coding class. And they've all offered to build the 3 Awakenings website for me. And in today's world, it's a little difficult to kind of really get out there and start being active without a website to reach people and connect with people. So I'm just waiting a few more months for them to finish up their schooling. And then Telesan has told me that they'll all try to work together and power through, make a nice website for the 3 Awakenings. And then we'll start doing some tours and hit up a few places this year, and next year I'd actually like to do some international travel. So there's a few of you I'm going to be getting in touch with here over the next few months so that we can begin planning some international trips in 2019. Also, everyone, we have an alchemy retreat going on here, 2-day practice intensive here at the temple in a few weeks. Still plenty of space to come, and I'd love to see you guys if any of you want to come. So just make sure to check the website. You can see it there in the events, and you can go ahead and schedule for it. But that should be a really nice retreat because the spring energy, though you wouldn't know any better being here right now, but the spring energy is going to start kicking in. That's because technically, energetically, we're still in winter. The new moon hasn't come after the equinox, you know, so we need to wait for the new moon to come, and then the first lunar day after the new moon, after the equinox, is when spring actually technically begins energetically.
That also happens to be the weekend of Ramos and Leo's birthday. You guys
Oh, and Charlotte says it's also the weekend of Ramos and I's birthday. You know, so if you wanted to spend my birthday with me, you need to come to the retreat.
I'm just saying, it's a special weekend. It's the big 3-0.
Yeah, big 3-0. Don't remind me. So Lewis asks, if we feel our energy is being pulled outwards into the world, is there something objective and energetic to this, or is it a case of unsettled mind being drawn outwards? Well, right now, everybody feels a little insane because we've been just being pounded by solar flares and geomagnetic storms. So that's one aspect of things, you know, that's kind of really thrown off some people. And then astrologically, Rahu and Ketu are in a really intense place, and they have been now for oh gosh, 5 or 6 months maybe. Probably not that. Well, yeah, probably about 5, 6 months. They're in 2 different lunar mansions that deal with taking things really, really deep in you and bringing them out to the surface, right? So Rahu is in the lunar mansion, the nakshatra called Ashlesh, and also called Ashravana. And this represents all of like the really deep things you've been suppressing for a long time, coming out to the surface, like seeing the light of day. And so as a result, all kinds of things have happened. That's why like a lot of relationship changes have happened recently. A lot of like, if you look in the news, there's all kinds of corruption scandals coming to light, all kinds of sexual abuse scandals coming to light. It's all that same stuff. It's a combination of skeletons in the closet as well as just things that were, you know, things that were problems for a long time and they were just stuffed down. And now they're being forced out. Like Rahu moving through here, it's like a surgeon just pulling all this stuff out.
Would that be the same as then, just like old traumas or things coming to the surface as well?
Yeah. Charlotte asked, could that also relate to like old traumas and things really coming to the surface from like childhood, teenage years, things like that? And absolutely true. In fact, even some traumas from previous lives could arise. So that's where Rahu is. Rahu is just stirring up the pot there. And then Ketu is in a nakshatra called Shravana. And Shravana is really interesting nakshatra. I always find it's funny that when I do astrological readings, the people who sign up for readings randomly, not the people who just regularly come every year, but the people who are just kind of getting the first time readings, tend to follow astrological trends in the sky at that moment. So Ketu is in Shravana, which is weakening people's concepts about borders and like bring out a lot of issues about, you know, space and borders, boundaries. Like this is, you know, this is my space, this is your space, and then this is our space, and we need to like acknowledge those 3 differences, right? That's all like Ketu and Shravana. And in fact, the issue is when Ketu is in Shravana, it weakens your boundaries, right? In that regards, it makes that your weak spot, which means that connected with Rahu and Ashlesha, people not being firm about their boundaries in the past is one of the things that is causing the problems that Rahu is now pulling to the surface now, right? Shravana is a very interesting. The way that you live properly according to Shravana is you follow the example of Vishnu. Vishnu turned into the Vamana incarnation of the dwarf, and he took 3 strides, and he grew with each stride. And the gods and the demons, you know, the asuras and the humans were all arguing over whose realm is where. And when Vishnu took these 3 strides, he laid the foundations of what would be the 3 worlds. And the human world was the smallest. The world of the spirits was substantially larger, and the worlds of the gods was almost inconceivably larger. And so likewise in our lives, we have to establish that boundary system too. That's the whole point of that Puranic myth. And when Shravana is being activated, the way that we live properly according to Shravana is we make sure human world concerns have a place. That's an important thing about it. They have a place, right? Vishnu didn't skip the human world, right? He defined it with 1 stride, but it was the smallest stride. So the human world has its concern, right? Then the next larger one is the spirit world, which is also a lot of things about our psyche, our psychology, right? And then he took his third step, the larger stride, which is the divine world, the heavenly worlds. And that means that, you know, likewise, proportionately, 70–75% of our energy needs to be going there, right? It needs to be focused on the divine worlds. And then the rest is sort of between spirit world and the human world. And so this is kind of the way that like this Ketu Rahu thing work. And they're very kind of intense combinations. Yeah.
I have a question about that too. Should I try to project one? You repeat my question.
Yeah, I'll repeat your question.
What I'm wondering too, if that relates to a little bit about what we were just talking about, you know, being in that gnostic state and the things that matter or don't matter there, and then having to come back and bridge that reality with your experience here. Like, would you say that that's maybe a similar thing where that would kind of bring that up also?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, so Charlotte's mentioning, because her and I were talking a little bit before the video about when you go into gnosis, how you try your experience of leaving gnosis to go back into the world, and the very difficult, in a sense, emotional journey that can lead to, that can take a long time to really figure out, which is how do you go into a place, into a heavenly world, where the volume gets dimmed down on all your worldly concerns, right? You feel like they don't matter anymore. They don't disappear, they just literally become less important. But then you come back to this world and the volume revs back up on everything. Now you're back in the world and everything matters again. You don't keep that Gnostic detachment when you leave the Gnostic state, right? If your Gnosis becomes constant, then that's Henosis. Now you're in a perpetual state of unity. That's a very high state, right? And so, yeah, in a sense, too, I'm sure that there's important lessons to learn with Vishnu's strides in terms of, you know, how to maintain those three things all the time, instead of just sometimes I'm in the human world, sometimes I'm in the spirit world, sometimes I'm in the heavenly world, right? And experiencing them as separate things. And that's honestly, that's a lot of the spiritual path, too, is trying to learn how to integrate and harmonize those things. So the point is, a lot of really intense psychological stuff happening in the sky right now. And that's why the Slack chat is filled with people saying that they feel insane.
Yeah.
So that's why almost all chats are filled with people saying that they feel insane.
So I have a question about that too. Because even in Henosis, right, where your level of detachment was maintained, you're still in this experience having to participate with others in their reality. It's almost like you have your own, right? But you're still having to almost like, not necessarily mix, but meet people where they're at, right? Like you're in a much higher state of being, but in order to participate with us, you have to be able to like meet us at our lower state in a way.
Right, yeah.
I mean, obviously in the process inspiring us to like elevate our state through our experience of you, but somewhere in between it's like.
But that's also what compassion is, you know, like from the spiritual perspective, and from a spiritual teacher perspective, I think they could hear you. That's actually what compassion is compassion is understanding that your view may be way up here. And you guys have to do this too. It's not just me. You all have to do this too, because you're spiritual practitioners. And spiritual practitioners at first can have a very hard time being compassionate towards non-practitioners, right? And maybe you look down on your mother and father, which is actually a very bad thing to do. Maybe you look down on old friends. Maybe you look down on work associates because they don't engage in the spiritual path like you do. That's not proper either. You know, you have to have the mindset of really having compassion for beings that are stuck in a world of suffering. And in a sense, that compassion doesn't have to be, you know, trying to get them onto the spiritual path. It can just be compassion in the sense of, you know, you understand that that's where they're at. And it's not a pity. It's like a love, you know, like you love that that's what they're going through. You offer your prayers and hopes that they can rise past that. And you're always there. If they decide to try to rise past that, you're there to help. But actually relating to people on those levels is a lot of it is about compassion. And that's, you know, the same struggle for me as it is for you guys. We're no different in that regard. It's just a matter of how do we, as you get deeper into the spiritual path, you begin to live more and more in a different world. And then as you live more and more in that world, you start to be around a lot of people who've never lived in that world, and they don't understand that world. And that's a struggle for a long time. I can't say that's a struggle I've mastered. A struggle for a long time to try to not just isolate yourself like that, and really try to bridge out and connect compassionately with other people. But that is, from the perspective of the spiritual path, that's what compassion truly is, in a sense. Like, that's a spiritual practitioner's compassion.
Yeah.
It's understanding through love. Just like how if you were a father, you know, and your kid was you know, being silly and he wanted to go buy a hot dog or something because he wanted a hot dog, you're not going to lecture him on like economic policies and the rise and fall of, you know, you're not going to like, you're not going to educate your kid on these things. He's a kid, right? That's not his reality. He could care less who the president is, right? It doesn't care at all about social justice. So just, you know, let the kid be a kid. And then likewise, teenagers are different, adults are different, and we interact with all of them differently, right? And so we have to have that same compassion also with our spiritual practice, understanding that some people are kind of like children, you know, spiritually, and their little things that may not seem so important to you are the most important things to them, right? And you know, like their new car might be the best moment of their entire adult life, as they finally bought that new car that they've been wanting since they were a teenager. And now they're 40 years old, they got a good job, the wife finally said okay, and now they go do it, right? And that's like their big moment. And I remember seeing an adult go through this once, and it was hard. It was hard not to. It was, I don't know. Like, in that moment, I saw like, this is like a kid. You know, like this is like a kid with a new toy. And but that's because that's the level that they're living on. You know, so you have to have compassion, and then as you can, when the chance arises, try to steer them a little bit towards some different ways of life. But anyway, so those are some of my comments on that. Let me see what else you guys are asking. Jim asked, aside from the April retreat, do you plan on having any other gatherings or retreats? Yeah, we plan on having a few this year. I've just been all over the place between my retreat and then traveling and trying to get settled back down this week. I haven't actually put out the schedule for all the new retreats. Teleson and I worked on, I think, 3 more in-person retreats and then 2 online workshops. So it's going to be actually, hopefully, pretty good year in terms of that. Nikolai asked, what would your advice be to us to make the most of the spring energy? So the Yellow Emperor's treatise on medicine is a great treatise, and there's a point in it where you talk about the different seasons and how to best take advantage of the energies. And in that treatise, he says that during springtime, this is like pretty much, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact words, but he's saying in springtime, be easy, wear loose clothing, like don't wear anything too tight, right? Be easy, be free. He says, take leisurely strolls in the morning. This is actually something he says. He says, wear loose clothing, take a leisurely stroll in the morning and drink some tea. And just kind of like smell the flowers and really appreciate the season with gentle motion, right? And this concept of like a free, gentle motion is really the crux of how we utilize spring's energy, right? Because that is the energy of spring. Spring is this gentle season, right? And it's this gentle movement. All the flowers are blooming. There's a subtle wind coming in. The showers are normally quite nice during springtime as opposed to the more severe thunderstorms you get during summer. You don't get the crazy snow and stuff that you have in winter. Spring's like this kind of peaceful time. And so traditionally, the Taoists say that, you know, for example, to explain some of these things, the reason why you would wear loose clothing is because very tight restricting clothing restricts the free flow of qi in the body. And liver is the organ that rules in springtime, and liver is responsible for circulating the qi in the blood throughout the body. And so if you're wearing tight clothing, then you're restricting the flow of your blood and your qi, and then likewise you're clogging up your liver, like you're making your liver there on this side, making your liver stagnant, and making it difficult for it to flow freely and do what it needs to do. Spring's an important time of detox, right? Like if you need to emotionally detox, psychologically detox, physically detox, it's a great time to detox. It's a great time to you know, do a new diet. Spring is the true energetic new year. So that's actually when you should do your New Year's resolutions, is in springtime, not in the middle of winter when there's no energy to, you know, give you any power for it. And so that's why you wear like the free loose clothing. He says to go on a walk in the morning because that actually kickstarts the free flow of the chi. It kickstarts the free flow of the energy through the channels. He says to smell the flowers because the aromatic nature of a flower disperses chi. It breaks up stagnation, right? And so to smell the flowers will actually encourage your lung chi to free up, which will in turn encourage the liver chi to free up and begin circulating blood, circulating energy, and it elevates your mood. And the more elevated your mood is during springtime, again, the freer that your energy will flow. He says to drink tea in the morning for the same reason. The little bit of caffeine that's in the tea will just get your heart pumping a little bit better, get your blood flowing a little bit better, give you some energy, and just kind of kickstart the whole liver process, right? And like little detox teas and things like that. I highly recommend holy basil, tulsi, during springtime, that everybody drink lots of tulsi. Because, and dandelion too, dandelion and tulsi. They both bloom during this season. They're both connected to this season, and they both have great detox effects on the blood and on the liver. And so I highly recommend that just tulsi tea be a regular thing that you take. And yes.
I would be finished, but I just wanted to add to it.
Okay, Charlotte wants to add to it. Charlotte's an acupuncturist, and so she's licensed to add to it.
I actually wanted to add to that, everything's like yin yang, and so everything you're saying is like perfectly accurate, but it's kind of like, it's almost like saying too, like, take it easy, like chill, do things that are nice, like be present, enjoy the things that are coming to the surface again, the flowers that are coming up, because liver is also resentment, irritability, frustration, anger, and so it's like all of our energies have been deep in the body. They were in hibernation. Now everything's coming back up. But in that process, everybody's feelings, like all the frustrations, all the old resentments and all that stuff, like the reason we're all feeling crazy, that's all coming to the surface too.
That's true. That's a good way to put it too.
And so like tea helps you chill out.
Yeah.
The flowers, take a walk. It helps you
that's
process
true.
the thoughts
Things that
and
help
feelings
you,
that are moving, and it helps move the stagnant energy of the liver that's trying to. Because even though it's important to have that free flow, it's also a time where those things are more inclined to stagnate because we're experiencing the emotions that impede that flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, in the Yellow Emperor's Classic, he's saying just chill out, but chill out, but move.
Yeah, like,
chill out,
yeah.
Chill out, but move. It really intense working out is not really. I mean, honestly, it's probably never recommended. But some good daily exercise. Spring and summer are both good times for regular exercise, whereas regular exercise in fall and winter depletes you. So this is when you should get in shape, and then you should follow the course of nature and get a little chubby during winter. Eat a lot of fruits, and that's when you can have some sweets actually. And like I'm talking like traditional, ways of looking at it is that you eat very lean in spring and summer, and you kind of shuck off the weight and you exercise, you're moving a lot. But then and traditionally in fall and winter, that's when a lot of the berries finally and a lot of the nuts and everything all start to come up at the end of summer. So you can have some sugars, your body can process it better later in the year. But this is a good time to just be mindful of your diet, be mindful of your exercise, go out on a nice walk each morning, make time for yourself each day. Read a book, right? Because reading activates the eyes, and the eyes and the liver are directly connected, right? The liver opens up into the eyes, and that's part of too of like looking at flowers, going on a walk and looking at all the pretty things, because everything's blooming, everything looks beautiful, and so it stimulates your eyes, which in turn again stimulates your liver, right? If you're a young guy, go look at all the pretty girls. If you're a young girl, go look at all the pretty guys. But go, just get the energy just kind of gently flowing, right? And that's kind of the best way to utilize it. In terms of spiritual practice at this time, the internal alchemy of spring is qigong and tai chi and rhythmic motion tied in with breathing. So if you can weave in some of that into your day, standing postures as well, something that kind of gently ties in the energy with the body and the breath, right? Whereas during summertime, it's much more like intense pranayama, really harsh breathing practices and things. So I'll talk a little bit. Each season, there's some different practices that are at their climax at that point. Like if you do them at that season, you get the most bang for your buck. And in spring, Tai Chi is excellent in spring. I mean, absolutely excellent. Yoga is excellent in spring, like Hatha Yoga. what they call it, vinyasa.
Mhm.
And then qigong is excellent in spring. So all of these are like, they involve gentle rhythmic motions and breathing and the free flow of energy, and they just all kind of idealize how we want to be energetically aware and thriving during spring. Shane asked, how often would you recommend us to fast? I very rarely recommend fasting for any substantial length of time. I put my body through hell sometimes, but it's because I'm very aware of my body. I've done a lot of retreats in my life. I've done a lot of martial arts in my life. I've done a lot of austerities in my life. I've learned myself, right? And so I know, even if everybody else is worried I'm about to die, I know what I can handle, you know, in that regards. I generally don't recommend fasting for long periods of time, especially for householders, because life is exhausting. However, I do recommend fasting, and I think that if you can get to a point where you can fast 1 day a week, and my ideal fast of that would be to still drink fluids, right? But avoid sugars. I mean, like really just drink water and tea. You know, have some water and some non-sweetened tea throughout the day, because you'll appreciate the caffeine when you're hungry. You know, it'll help give you some energy. It'll give you false energy, but it'll give you energy. And to avoid eating anything for, you know, honestly, if you're only doing it occasionally, it's, you know, sunrise to sunrise, right? It's a full 24-hour fast. If you are fasting a lot, you know, like if you want to do a 2-week fast, or you want to fast for a week, or you want to fast for a month, then you fast during the day and you break fast at night, right? And that's the Sufi way. That's how I learned how to fast. But then it's a more severe fast, right? The fast during the day is no food or water, right? Not even anything to drink during the day. And then you break fast at night with something light. Again, if you're in retreat, that's fine. If you're going to work, that's not fine. You're not going to have enough energy. You're going to collapse. So that's again where you have to kind of, I would recommend that if you're still staying active and you're going to do a prolonged fast like that, avoid food during the day, but still have good nourishing drinks during the day. And then at night, make sure you have a good protein shake or something, get a lot of nutrients into yourself.
Can I comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you also have a different body constitution. It was like pretty hard on you because you did it for like, it was a really intense fast.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else doesn't have that, so they need to be mindful too of just being aware of their body and what their needs are, even if it's shifting. Because like, you know, that shifted for you throughout the whole time because it was such a long and serious fast. But you know yourself well enough, like you were mentioning, you were able to see those shifts and kind of like be mindful.
Yeah, there's different body types. You know, if you're one of those people who can't put on weight no matter what you do, for example, I mean, you just can eat a tub of ice cream and be a pound thinner the next day. Yeah, you gotta be very careful with fasting. You can kill yourself fasting, right? And then also it's no matter what, anytime you can do any kind of retreat, anytime you can do any kind of prolonged austerity, talk to your teachers about it, right? And in particular, like talk to teachers who have some knowledge about those things, right? So for example, I've always loved traditional medicine, and I've been surrounded by that literature and those teachings for the last 10 years. And so I understand healthier ways to do a retreat, and I can understand your body type, right? Same thing with Ramos. Ramos can look at you, can diagnose your body type. He can figure out, should you fast or shouldn't you fast? Matt Goolsby, one of the assistant teachers in the school, is another great example. He's an acupuncturist. Charlotte's an acupuncturist. You can send her a message, talk to her about it. You know, like there's a few people you can kind of reach out to and help learn a little bit more about your body type, right? Whereas, you know, for example, like Capheus isn't very learned in those things. Saleson's not too learned in those things when it comes to actually understanding health and stuff. So yeah, that's something where definitely talk to me, you know, talk to Matt, something like that, to kind of learn a little bit and kind of make sure that everything looks good, because you don't want to hurt yourself. If you hurt yourself, then you're going to blame your spiritual path when it was really just a lack of education, you know, that caused the problem.
And also people have a responsibility to themselves to make sure that they're well informed and that they know how to pay attention to their body.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan asked, gnosis is a permanent waking state though, right? Or is the stabilization of hypnosis a permanent gnosis?
Yeah.
Gnosis is not a permanent waking state. Okay, so we'll try to define these terms a little bit. There's the hypostatic gnosis, right? Like there's the hypostasis of gnosis. That's the meditative state. That's you close your eyes, you go deep, and everything ceases to be. And then there's the the gnosis, which is always with you, right? There's that gnostic state, which is the understanding that you have. Now that you have knowledge of the self, because remember, gnosis means knowledge, right? So now that you have knowledge of the self, your view of things in the world changes. It's a profound metanoia, okay? So there's a few different things. We have the hypostasis itself of gnosis, the hypostatic meditative state, right, of gnosis, which is really noesis. And then we have the metanoia that occurs as a result of now having access to real knowledge, having access to see the realities ourselves in deep states of meditation. So the hypostatic meditation produces in us a kind of gnosis, a kind of knowledge. That knowledge is a metanoia. It's a change, a fundamental change in our brain chemistry as to how we see the world and how we interpret things, right? Your brain really changes. You will feel a lot of weird things happening in your brain when you spend long times in gnosis. You'll actually feel new neural pathways being like driven out, like drilled out from your brain. And when you come out of gnosis, you'll just start thinking about things in whole new lights, whole new ways, whole new angles, right? So that's the gnosis that's always with you, right? At first, it's more fleeting. As the years go by and you get deeper and deeper into the gnostic state with your meditation, then what ends up happening is gradually it kind of, you get deeper and deeper into it, and when you come back, you bring more of it with you. And this is the gradual approach to hypnosis. Hypnosis is really when you close your eyes and go into gnosis, and when you open them, there's no difference. You're up and you're cooking breakfast, and you're cooking breakfast in the state of gnosis, right? Until then, gnosis will be something that stays with you all the time, because you go into it in meditation. It stays with you in your heart, but it's like not in your hands. I don't know how else to explain it. Like it's not your normal waking emotional and psychological reality. Because when you go into the gnostic state, it's definitely a hypostasis. It's a state where the volume on everything gets turned down, the senses withdraw, the blood withdraws into the deeper organs and into the spine, and your energy withdraws into the spine and then raises up into the pineal gland, into the center of the brain. And when you get deep enough in gnosis, you leave your body totally. You're completely beyond your body. And everything kind of stops here. And you can be in that state for hours. You can be in that state for a long time. And then your karmas will gradually pull you back down. There'll be like no karma. There'll be no movement, no cessation. And then it'll be like a slight ripple on the water after a few hours. And then that gets worse and worse, and it gets worse and worse. And it's your karmas. It's your karmas, like subtle little thoughts start arising again. Subtle little desires and impressions begin to arise again. Subtle memories begin to arise. You begin to remember who you are in this incarnation. And then as you begin to form more associations with your ego, with your personality, the soul gradually descends back into the body, and you come out of the gnostic state. That's when it's done naturally. That's if you carry your gnosis to its full term, right? You can learn how to go in and out of will. It's not like once you're there, you're stuck there until that happens. But that's your ceiling that you're hitting in gnosis. Is how long can you stay in gnosis until your karmas begin to pull you back down. And so that's the difference between that meditative state of gnosis, where, just like, for example, an electrician is always an electrician. He carries that knowledge with him everywhere. But that's different than actually doing electrical work, electrician work, right? A doctor is always a doctor, carries that knowledge with him or her everywhere that they go, right? And in a moment's need, they could be a doctor in that situation. But when they're being a doctor, it's like its own thing. It's a dedicated time for that skill. So likewise, sitting in the meditative state of gnosis is your dedicated time for working on gnosis and getting deeper into it, right? Whereas when you come out of gnosis, you can't say you're not in gnosis, but you're not in that meditative state, right? Like you're still a doctor, but you're just not actually doing any doctor work at that moment. So I hope that that's like a decent analogy for you to understand. Lewis asked, what should be our approach to helping people with spiritual curiosity or inclinations, given that we don't yet have all the tools for the job? Well, you show up at their door with Euripides' copy of the Back Guy, and you ask them if they've heard of our Lord and Savior Dionysos. No. What you do is you be a good example. Right? I mean, it's interesting that a lot of my early students were also a lot of my early friends. They were my friends first before they were my students. Parmenon, knew me when I was 14, 15 years old. Capheus has known me since I was 12. I knew Matt Goolsby in high school. I mean, there's a lot of early students in the school who actually have been my friends for a long time, and they came to the spiritual path partly just because they saw how I lived and they saw that it was good, and they eventually decided that they would like that too. Right? And so, at the end of the day, that's the best way. Is just live your path, and if you live your path, eventually, if you live it well and somebody else isn't living their path very well, they might want to live your path and see, like, what is it that you're doing that's bringing you so much joy? What is it? There's a number of students in the school who actually on their applications mentioned that they joined the school only because they met another student in the school and were just so impressed with them and with their mind, with their way of life, that they wanted a part of it. They wanted to see what it was that brought this person so much happiness and so much peace. And so they joined the school, and they mentioned that in their applications. It's very moving. It's my favorite kind of application to read is when somebody's talking about how they were moved from an experience that they had. I've read applications where literally somebody will say, oh, I met this student of yours just in an old rundown cathedral one day. I went in there to look at it. It was this place where I met them at a shopping mall, or I met them, at the park, and we talked, and I could just feel this nice energy, and could see like the happiness and peace in them, and I want to see what that's about. And so at the end of the day, that's really the best way. Now, if you can intellectually engage them, that's good too, but that depends on the kind of person. Some people don't respond to that at all. Right? So some people, it's just a matter of you being there to pick them up when they fall and to help them on their way. And eventually, maybe they'll realize that, if they were on a similar way or on a similar path, they wouldn't be falling so much. But living your path is by far the most important thing. If people who know you don't know that there's something different about the way that you live, they don't know that there's something divine about your life, then you're probably not being very true to your path. Right? Like something I tell students all the time is, if somebody followed you around with a camera all day and you didn't know it, at the end of the day, if they looked at that film, would they say, when they judged who you were, would they say this is a spiritual person? Would they say this is somebody living the spiritual life? Right? Or would they not even know that you meditated if they just randomly picked a day? These are important things because we have to develop sincerity. Sincerity is a dying virtue in today's world. Sincerity means to be the same person when you're by yourself as you are when you're with others. Right? And if those two aren't lining up, you're not living your truth, you're not living your path properly. And so if you're really sincere about your path, other people will feel it. It'll motivate others. And if you light enough of a fire in yourself, you'll ignite the fires of others as well. Jim asked, for springtime, should we increase the time spent in thought observation? Actually, no. In springtime, I prefer that students do more active ascesis, whereas I prefer long periods of thought observation and stillness happening like in wintertime, like fall and winter. That doesn't mean you should totally avoid it. No, you should still sit in stillness, right? 20, 30 minutes after your practices. But in terms of taking a dedicated, 2 or 3 hour block to sit just in stillness, that's better in winter because all your energy is retreated deeper into your heart and kidneys. And so you can really work more directly on your shin, your mind. During springtime, if you have some extra time, it's better to do some qigong, some yoga, some breathing practices, something to kind of like encourage your energy to flow and to move. Or just go on a nice walk in nature and do lots of nature breathing. Do pore breathing as you walk through the forest and just really connect to nature around you as you do your pore breathing. That's an excellent thing to do in this time. Nikolai says, when Yamdaka said that if a person is in henosis, they would not know it. When said Porphyry could not have reached henosis and known it. What did he mean? You're going to have to give me a much more specific quote than that, Nikolai, because I don't recognize it in the way that you're saying it. I don't recognize that statement. And I've read Iamblichus's treatise many times. So you'll have to just kind of give me a clearer quote, a reference for that. And Keith asked, oh no, oh gosh. The dog is trying to destroy my ritual area outside.
I don't know where you put it. It was a white thing that has to be hanging.
Oh, okay, I'll take a look.
Oh my gosh.
So, Nick, let's see who's next. Keith asked, is the Iamblichus active from the spiritual level with the school or with the just such as yourself? Or is he in some heaven somewhere or incarnated somewhere? Yeah, Iamblichus is active in the school, and so is Plato. Plato has actually directly made himself known to me, and shown me his form. And so I'll share that experience with you. Normally, it's quite a profound experience, so normally I wouldn't share it. But this is level 1. A lot of you guys are long-time students, know me for a long time. But yeah, last year while I was sleeping, I woke up in the middle of the night, and an angel was at the foot of the bed. And angels wake me up sometimes. The spirits, dead people wake me up. Demons wake me up. Hungry ghosts wake me up. Ancestor spirits wake me up. Nature spirits wake me up because there's like a nature spirit highway that runs through my bedroom, and they won't see the human world. They're just seeing their world. And angels wake me up, and I woke up one night to an angel at the foot of the bed, anointing my feet with oil, and the angel was rubbing my feet very lovingly and kind of like massaging up to the knee. And I woke up and looked down at it, and when it looked at me, it released and it flew up into the ceiling, and the ceiling disappeared, and everything became white, like I was looking at this. Like if you were really close to the sun, all you would see was the sun, was just be that blinding light. And that's what the ceiling turned into in the middle of the night. And then standing in the middle there, and I realized the light was coming from him, was Plato. And Plato looked profound. I thought, I didn't realize, because it took me a good day to really process this experience, and I did not immediately recognize it as Plato. I thought it must have been Hercules. He was so powerful looking. I mean, he looked like oh gosh, like the leader of the Spartans. I mean, he had this power to him. He was almost dressed more like a general than he was a philosopher, and just power. I mean, a chiseled chin, broad forehead, shoulders twice as broad as mine. I mean, just powerful human being. And I realized later, really, like why he was given his nickname Plato, by his gym coats, because Plato means broad. It's just referred to his base, to his size, his stature. And but it was nice because then I was able to find an old marble bust that was done of him that was then later reproduced in Rome, and we still have some pictures of it. And it was to the image. It was clearly done at a later time in his life, whereas when I saw Plato, because he's an immortal, he looked young, he looked youthful, like a man in his 20s or 30s. But Very, very powerful. So Plato has directly come and given his blessings to the school. He came and gave his direct darshan and gave his blessings to the lineage and to the school, right? So that's the most important. Iamblichus is active in the school in other ways. Nikolai said, since our school is rooted a lot in Pythagoreanism, how come the inter-school rituals are not Egyptian? Nikolai, you're going to have to clarify that question, because I don't understand that question. So Keith asked, how do you balance being giving and forgiving and protecting yourself? Well, Keith, you know, there's not a good, that's a question that requires a book or two. You know, that's not a question that can be answered. I mean, there's no, I don't even know if I've mastered that. I mean, that's a serious thing. I mean, being giving and forgiving while protecting yourself. You could write a book on each one of those three things. So that's a profound thing. That's more of just a journey of self-discovery that you have to go on. In order to really learn, right? Because you have to be honest to yourself and truthful to yourself, and you can't let other people's feelings and emotions be the basis of your life, right? Like you have to live your truth, even if other people are having a hard time living theirs. But then also you have to be, if you want people to be giving towards you and support you, then you have to be giving and supporting towards others, right? You have to put into the universe what you want the universe to bring you. Right? If you need love, you need to put love out into the universe. If you need forgiveness, you need to put forgiveness out into the universe. If you need redemption, you need to put that out into the universe. I mean, so that's, you know, just spiritually speaking, because I'm not a therapist, you know, that would be my perspective on it. Would be just, if there's something that you feel like you need, put it out to the universe. And if there's something you feel like that you need to keep more at home, then, you know, spend some more time kind of by yourself and learn those things about yourself and how to be safe and secure in yourself. I think the dog is eating one of my sacred daggers that was planted outside in the yard. So this is, you know, magicians normally didn't have pets, and this is why. He's just a dog. He doesn't know any better. It's a bone. Oh gosh. Lewis Kirk, if you could give one lecture for the world to hear today, what would you share with it? Oh gosh. Well, that's a loaded question. I don't know. You're putting me on the spot. Probably just be about sincerity. People definitely don't need to hear about how to meditate. Yeah, that's one of my daggers. And so, but sincerity, ikhlas, I mean, that's like the basis of virtue. That's the basis of the whole spiritual path. If you can't be sincere, if you can't be a sincere person and you can't sincerely practice the path, you can't sincerely help people, you can't sincerely be courageous, you can't sincerely be truthful, you can't sincerely be compassionate. If you can't be sincere, I don't see how any of the other virtues can exist. And without the virtues, the spiritual path doesn't exist. And without the spiritual path, enlightenment doesn't exist. And without enlightenment, liberation doesn't exist. And so you're just stuck in suffering. So I would say that, you know, if God was like, Veos, you know, you're gonna die tomorrow, and everybody's gonna be around to hear you talk today because everyone knows you're gonna die tomorrow. So what's gonna be your lecture? I would lecture on sincerity. Nikolai asked, how is it possible for the body of light manifestations to be happening if a person is not even in enlightenment? Or is it not possible or extremely rare or something? I like Nikolai's questions. I mean, body of light is not, so body of light's a spectrum. You have a body. Right now it is 100% body, 0% light, right? Over the course of decades of training, that spectrum will shift. You will have 90% body and 10% light, 80% body and 20% light, 70% body, 30% light. Weird little things will start to happen. You won't show up as much in photographs. There'll be weird light phenomena that happen around you. People might see you disappear. You know, there's, as you get more and more into that percentage, but that takes decades and decades of practice to keep getting deeper and deeper there. Body of light is really when you're at about, 50-50, and then you break that, and you start to become more light than you are body. Then that means you're living more in the heavenly worlds than you are this one. You're more a divine being than you are a physical. You're more a deity than you are a man or woman, right? And at that point, that's really like the body light. That's going to be when you die and weird phenomena happen, things along that sort. But those early phases, yeah, of course, if you suffuse your body constantly with lots of electricity, lots of energy, lots of light through different practices, you're going to convert a little bit of yourself into light. That's just going to happen. You don't need to be enlightened for that, right? So you can get some body of light phenomena without it necessitating enlightenment. The issue is that for a full body of light, it requires that you've realized non-duality. And so that's the issue. You can have a partial body of light without recognizing perfect enlightenment, which is to truly perceive the non-dual state of a total unity, right? But you cannot achieve a perfect body of light without realizing non-duality, right? You can have a partial one and not be enlightened. But in order to have the full body of light, it necessitates that you live in a non-dual state of being all the time, which is the highest level of enlightenment, right? That's not like that's not gnosis. That's like apotheosis. We're talking like the highest level of enlightenment is required. So you can have the early levels of the body of light without even the lowest level of enlightenment. But for the full body of light, it necessitates the highest level of enlightenment, right? And so that's why we practice both at the same time, right? We do our energetic practices and we try to also get deeper and deeper towards reaching enlightenment. Joao asked, does Ramos have any plan of being a head teacher with you again? Joao, only the gods know what is in Ramos's mind day to day. So I certainly have no idea, but he's the one to ask about that, not me. Nathan asked, this will be my last question, by the way, guys. Nathan asked, Veos, do certain medications have a negative effect on spiritual progress or block? Oh, you just changed it. Used for anxiety and panpsychosis have a negative effect on spiritual progress or block any forward movement through attainment? Absolutely, guys. I mean, psychological drugs are warfare on your soul. And it is because the spiritual path depends upon you changing your brain chemistry. Your brain chemistry alters as you practice. If you are forcibly changing your brain chemistry into lower states of vibration through psychological drugs, you're fighting uphill. Can you still make progress? Yes. Do I recommend everybody who's on any kind of psychological drugs helping them just quit? Absolutely not, right? But you need to work alone. You need to work with your spiritual path and your psychologist or your psychiatrist to gradually wean yourself off of those things, right? But get medical help. I'm not a professional in that field at all. I'm just telling you, as a teacher, so I've never been on those drugs, but as a teacher who has helped many people who've been on those drugs, I'm telling you that absolutely it makes it hard for the brain chemistry to free up and change the way that it needs to. And my advice is always make forward progress every day and keep changing psychiatrists until you find one that's willing to work with you. Right? You're not stuck to your psychologist. You're not stuck to this guy just because he has your own prescriptions. Right? He or she is not the only one with that degree. Find one that has a flexible worldview that will work with you. Right? So and who wants you to be healthy. find a psychologist that actually wants you to be healthy instead of just being a money bag for them, right? If you can do that, then they'll be totally fine with trying to gradually wean you off your medications until you can be a nice psychologically fit person. And Lewis asked if we could say a group opening prayer together before we go, and of course we can. You know. Makar hostes yudayama teletaste aneras Myotanagastuekai Leasue type sukan Hostes Yudamon Teletas Unidos, Myotanagastuekai Leasue type sukan Lese Bakyon also is Katamoisin Katamataros Megalas Orga Kubelas Demechuon Anatorsos Te Tenason Kesote Stefanotes Tianuson Terapion Itebaka Bromion Pirateon Deve Itebaka Bromion Pirateon Teo. Thank you all for joining me this morning. God bless all of you. And these will become a regular thing again. Probably next Saturday will be level 2's video chat. Okay, so for those of you on level 2, I will see you next Saturday, and we'll kind of alternate, I think, every other week. So thank you all. God bless. Be victorious. Enjoy your morning, your evening, wherever you're at.